When the land grows tired and the weather becomes uncertain, the solution isn't always new. It's your neighbors, it's tradition passed down from generations, and sometimes it's cow dung. In the vast plains of Mulunga district, in western Zambia, you'll find Kadiani village. Kadiani might not be physically tight-knit, but it certainly is in the hearts of those who live there. The village is full of multi-generational farmers who've been practicing all kinds of farming techniques for decades. But one traditional farming method is making a comeback: kraal shifting. Kraal shifting is a fancy way of saying using cow manure as fertilizer. It's not high-tech, it's not new, but that shit works. And in the Kadiani village, it's turning tradition into resilience. You're listening to Nature Answers, Rural Stories from a Changing Planet. Together, we explore stories of how communities in rural sub-Saharan Africa are working with nature to adapt to climate change. I'm your host, Ivy Prosper. In today's episode, we're traveling out to the edge of Zambia's western border with one goal in mind: to see some dung. The Kadiani village is located deep in the horizon. To get there feels like driving off the edge of the world. We begin our journey where the road ends and fades into grass. We drive through large puddles and past several herds of cows, until the green plains fade into the warm summer sky. And somewhere in that openness, Kadiani village begins. The village doesn't announce itself. Instead, it unfolds quietly across the plains. Neighbors are separated by fields, their homes only visible in the distance. For someone passing through, it may feel isolating. But to Evans Mundia, this is home.
I'm a married man with 6 children. My wife and family are able to rely on me. I can provide for them and take my children to school, so I'm very happy.
Mundia is 30 years old and has been farming since he was 15. He inherited his knowledge and skills from his parents. But farming in Mongu comes with its own challenges. In most of the district, the soil is almost entirely sand. It drains quickly and struggles to hold onto nutrients. And with climate change bringing rising temperatures and unpredictable rainfall, these conditions have grown far more severe. In 2024, Zambia experienced a historic drought, and many Zambian farmers continue to struggle with the after effects. Evans explains that due to chemical fertilizers, the soil was stripped of its natural nutrients.
When used to farm using chemical fertilizers, I did have a harvest, but in the following season, if I did not apply the chemical fertilizers, that would mean that I was not going to harvest anything.
For farmers like Evans, these fertilizers offer only short-term solutions.
I understand that you can use the chemical fertilizers, which have little to no labor, but there are still challenges. In villages, for us, a farmer, to find the money to buy chemical fertilizers, it is very costly.
This wasn't always an issue. Before chemical fertilizers, Evans explained manure was the only way to go.
Kraal shifting, where we produce manure, has been around for a very long time, because from the time I was still with my parents, they used to do the kraal shifting, and even from the time I started farming on my own, I have been doing kraal shifting.
Kraal shifting is the traditional method used to fertilize the soil for centuries. Livestock are kept on a temporary enclosure, or kraal, on the soil you are going to farm. The animals are then moved around the field every 3 days, letting the concentrated manure naturally fertilize the soil. It's a slow process that doesn't end when the animals are gone either.
So after you have covered the whole field with manure, then you plow. You have to tend the soil and wait for the right time to plant the seeds so that when the time comes, you are prepared to plant.
And so gradually, the use of kraal shifting began to fade as chemical fertilizers required less time and less labor. But as the climate continued to change, Ivan says farmers noticed a difference between fields created with manure versus chemicals.
When it comes to the issue of climate change, as farmers, we have realized that when you're planting your crops in a field which has got no manure, effects of climate change damage the crops. But when you plant the crops in the field where there is manure, the manure will preserve the moisture content in the soil.
Farmers like Evans began to rediscover traditional farming methods. Today, Evans no longer uses chemical fertilizers.
So actually, the effects of climate change really helps us to realize that through the use of nature-based solutions and manure, the farmers can still get something, and I think farmers are really appreciating it.
But owning cattle can be expensive. They eat and drink a lot, and taking care of them is a lot of work. Not everyone can afford their own herd, and without cattle, you can't practice kraal shifting. So instead of leaving those without cattle to continue buying chemical fertilizers, the farmers in Kadiani share.
As a village, we always work together as a team. So even when it comes to the issue of doing the kraal shifting, it's not that everyone in our village has got the cattle to date. So others who do not have the cattle are helped by those with them. That way, everyone can benefit from the manure. So we are working as a team.
Sharing cattle is another traditional practice in Kadiani. It is a system built on trust and the understanding that no farmer should be left behind. Evans says they've been doing this for generations, and it is something they will always do because farmers look out for each other.
Challenges are there, but as farmers, we feel for each other. So it's just the issue of working together and helping those without resources. Because climate change affects everyone, so we need to share what little we have so that each and everyone can benefit.
The system does more than make kraal shifting possible. It builds strength and resilience against the brutal effects of climate change. These traditional farming methods survive because the knowledge doesn't live in one place. It's shared from generation to generation, community to community, by farmers who make it their responsibility to teach others.
If it was possible, I would love to do that. To make everybody as a farmer.
Cow dung isn't something you see people get too excited about very often. But the moment you sit down with Lubasi Lubinda and start talking about using manure in farming, his face lights up with joy. In the Kalangu area of Mongu, Lubasi has been farming for over 30 years.
I'm not sure why I like farming. Sometimes I feel maybe it's just a calling or something. Because even if I do other businesses, I'm too attracted to farming a lot.
His home and farm are filled with life and love. Each building forms a circle around the center of his property. Chickens wander around the dusty paths with not a care in the world. A pig and her piglets cuddle in the shade. In the middle of the courtyard, his daughters and grandchildren lounge and play, while his 101-year-old mother watches from underneath a nearby tree with a smile on her face. Lubasi adores his family, whom he lovingly refers to as his future farmers.
These are my future farmers, yes, and in fact we need more farmers.
Farming brings the Lubinda family together. It's a way to pass knowledge, tradition, and passion to his children and grandchildren. Over the years, Lubasi has tried many different methods of farming, but nothing sticks quite like manure. To him, it's indispensable.
Cattle itself is wealth, isn't it? But the waste part of that cattle, again, is used as fertilizer. So that really makes everything to be very easy. Yes. Every day, they keep giving you the dugs which you can use for fertilizing your crops.
As a respected farmer in the communities, other farmers often come to Lubasi for help. And when they do, his advice is always practical. Start with what's already there.
So I used to tell them, no, it's not very difficult. Even where these animals go and graze, they leave the cow down. Go and collect, and then come and do it in your farm.
Lubasi is proud to pass on his knowledge to his family and community. But he doesn't believe tradition is enough and says farmers must keep learning. That's where Farm Radio International comes in.
I encourage every farmer who comes to me to listen to that program.
Lubasi says being unable to rely on predictable weather is pushing more farmers to adopt nature-based solutions.
What happened last year really pushes everybody to have an element of changing. Otherwise, if you don't adapt, you might be stuck.
Evans Mundia is now using new nature-based solutions he learned about from Farm Radio International. One of those is what he calls manure tea, to water his plants for extra fertilization.
I also use another type of nature-based farming solutions from the radio, where I put cow dung in a drum and water. After 2 days, I get the water from the drums and I water my crops with that. So the result is my crops get the nutrients from the manure. From the time I started using the new technique, more specifically using manure, the harvest has increased. It's actually been a good yield compared to way back.
Lubasi says adapting has become necessary to survive as farmers in these changing times, and that last year's drought was just the beginning.
If you are starting at the same point, then you face such challenges. You fall out if you're not very careful. So you have to adapt as the weather changes. So last year was a very good starting point to learn.
In Mongu, Zambia, whether it's livestock or knowledge, sharing isn't just practical, it's community. Farmers like Evans and Lubasi are blending new ideas with traditional methods and a philosophy of looking out for others.
We'll continue to help each other because helping goes in two ways.
Proving that community and knowledge are the strongest forms of resilience. And that's it for this week's episode of Nature Answers, a podcast produced by Farm Radio International. You can learn more about nature-based solutions and the people implementing them by subscribing to Nature Answers, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on social media at Farm Radio, or visit us at farmradio.org/natureanswers and find out how you can support the work Farm Radio International is doing to support farmers like Evans Mundia and Lubasi Lubinda by leaving us a donation at farmradio.org. And finally, we want to hear from you. Open up the recording app on your phone, tell us your name and where you're listening from, as well as a nature-based solution you're using in your community. Send us your recording to Nature Answers at farmradio.org, and you may be featured on a future episode. Until next time, I'm your host, Ivy Prosper, coming to you from Accra, Ghana.
This episode was written and produced in Zambia by me, Claire Hutcheon, with support from staff from the Media Institute of Southern Africa, MISA Zambia, Farm Radio International's partner office in Lusaka. My time spent in Zambia is something I will always treasure. I was fortunate enough to meet and work with so many lovely people in the office and learn how climate change is affecting rural farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. We traveled to 3 different provinces in Zambia, each more unique than the last. Thank you to the staff in Canada, Zambia, and Carleton for this once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will never forget. And a huge thank you to my fellow interns, Raquel Medina and Kaylin Monkman, who supplied the photographs for this episode, and their company and support throughout the summer. You'll hear their stories on Nature Answers. An additional thanks to Thomas Zulu, Crispin Bwala, our interview guests Lubasi Lubinda and Evans Mundia, guidance in the community by Oblat Radio Lizeli in Mongu. I joined as part of an internship program with Carleton University's School of Journalism.
I'm John McGill. one of the producers and the editor of this season of Nature Answers. Farm Radio International compensated community members who participated in our interviews. It is a common practice to compensate a person in this region for the time that they spent being interviewed. Our podcast would exclude many important perspectives if we could only interview those who could afford to step away from their economic activities without compensation. Nature Answers was produced by Farm Radio International, thanks to funding from the Government of Canada.